What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Freedom to Flourish podcast. My name is Dr. Tim Augustiniak. I'm here with a good friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Joel Miller. And today we've got an awesome episode for you. Today we're going to be talking about, are foods really superfoods, or are they super toxic or detrimental to your health? So the main idea with this episode is differentiating between the rules of superfoods or super not so superfoods, and figuring out exactly where you lie within all of these steadfast rules, all of these health influencers and people in the functional medicine world like to throw around, because everybody's different. Awesome superfood, eggs, awesome superfood. People like to talk about how coffee is a superfood, things like that, that every single food has benefits that it carries. Every single food has things that are negative that it has. But at the same time, there are health conditions. There's very specific things that you can have going on, allergies or genetic mutations, or just about anything that can contribute to you having a problem with something that everybody else is fine with. So the whole point of today's episode is to talk about main ones that we hear about, the main ones that we like to talk about, and help you identify, is it going to really be awesome for you, or is it really going to not be so awesome, and how you can identify that, figure that out for yourself. So hopefully it's going to be a good one today. We've got some great ideas. It'd be nice if it had gotten, I guess, took a poll with our followers on social media and all that stuff to see if they have some suggestions for this, but we'll just roll with what we got for now.
Yeah, we can always do a part 2 with that and add in some different Q&A stuff, which I think we should start doing anyways, because I think that would be helpful for people. So let's jump in. Yeah. We've got a big list of foods. So let's kind of start with, here's the general outline. I like to lay this out first so people kind of know what to look forward to. So number one, like the list of foods that we're going to kind of talk about, like, are these good foods, are these bad foods, and in what context are these good and bad foods? So we're going to talk about dairy. We're going to talk about eggs, especially the yolk. We're going to talk about meat. We're going to talk about artificial sweeteners. We're going to talk about different vegetables, green leafy vegetables. We'll talk about kale. We'll talk about beans and legumes, fermented foods, probiotics, multivitamins. We're going to talk about spinach, coffee, quinoa. Is it a good source of protein? And nuts, are they a good source of protein? And I'm sure there's some other foods that we'll come up with along the way. And then we're going to share kind of at the end, like, some of our favorite foods that we think everybody needs to be eating for just optimal health. And I think some of them may surprise you. So, Dr. Tim, we are on a time crunch today, so let's get rolling. Number one on our list is dairy. What are your thoughts on dairy? Is dairy something that people should avoid? Like, what is there? Is dairy, should that be essential to our diet because of all the nutritious value? What does that look like for you?
Maybe for each of these, we should, do a thumbs up or thumbs down for the people that are watching, on whether or not it's a superfood versus not superfood.
Okay.
I would say thumbs up. Dairy is 100% a superfood.
Agreed.
But just like every other thing that's going to be on this list, not for everybody. And it depends on what kind of dairy you're talking about. So what I mean by that, so cow dairy, some people have allergies to it. Some people have autoimmune conditions that they just cannot tolerate it. I personally am in that category. I have yet to have any patient that has a equally or more significant reaction to dairy than how I will show for it. So I can't do any cow dairy. I can't do butter. I can't do anything like that. But there are essential fatty acids that are found in dairy that your body must get one way or another. They're essential. We cannot take other fatty acids, other fats that we consume, and convert them internally into a specific type of fatty acid. So we've talked about it before, butyric acid or butyrate. It's a super essential fat acid that you can only really get through dairy. Either that or a healthy microbiome with a good variety of, green leafy vegetables or other foods that help feed the microbiome accordingly. And in my opinion, you just don't end up getting enough of it unless you do dairy. And so in circumstances like myself, goat dairy or sheep dairy, some other form of dairy is where I must get that from. And so I'll go to the local health food store. They carry goat butter. I end up cooking with that. I'll have goat yogurt, goat milk, things like that. It doesn't taste as good, unfortunately, but you get used to it. But for most people, if you don't have a glaring problem with dairy, you don't have any sort of issues, you don't have any gut issues with it, you don't have any noticeable issues with it, more often than not, you should be having dairy because there are essential fatty acids in their body requires. And a lot of people will say, dairy is automatically inflammatory. If you get sick, you shouldn't have dairy, or, dairy is good for anybody because it's inflammatory. And it's inflammatory. Why? What does that even mean? Everybody likes to throw around the word inflammation and not talk about what inflammation actually is. It's immune system activation due to some sort of underlying allergy, some underlying reaction with the microbiome, some sort of allergic response. It has to be something where you are driving the immune system to do more work. Your immune system does not care to attack your body, or it does not care to defend itself against dairy, then you should be totally fine. Yes, there's different bugs and things like that, viruses, bacteria, fungus that can feed off of lactose, that stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has that issue. So that's my 2 cents on dairy. Superfood, yes. You can't tolerate cow dairy, find another way because it is essential for your diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of healthy fats and proteins in dairy, as well as other different nutrients. Obviously, people talk about calcium. I don't know if dairy is quite the best source of calcium, but in general, I know there's other.
Does the body good, right?
Say it one more time.
I said it does the body good.
Yeah, I think so. And so phosphorus and potassium and even some vitamin D, things like that. There's some different nutrients and different minerals in dairy, but here's the big piece I kind of hone in on with it when it comes to dairy. To keep it short and sweet, is I think dairy that we eat needs to be raw dairy. And what that means is it's not pasteurized. So the 30-second explanation there is most cows are jacked up on corn and soy and different GMO grains and things like that to help fatten them up. When they get fattened up, they have higher omega-6s, which drives inflammation. That weakens their immune system. Now they start getting infections. And with their infections, of course, they need antibiotics and vaccines and steroid shots and all these things. Their milk, their cheese, all their produce that comes from the cows are full of bacteria. So they have to heat it up. They have to pasteurize it to destroy all the bacteria. And unfortunately, that destroys all the enzymes. And so what I've seen is when you have cows that are not jacked up on these things, but they're just fed grass and they just roam in the pasture, they're not jacked up on vaccines and things like that, they don't get sick because they don't have high omega-6s. They don't have a ton of inflammation. And that's where the grass-fed meats, which we'll talk about the meats in a second, are really good. And that's where their dairy is not only safe, but it's actually way healthier, because when you heat things up with dairy, it usually will destroy a lot of the enzymes that are naturally there. So I tell people, you have a lactose intolerance. No, if you're drinking that milk, you have a bad milk intolerance, is a lot of times what I'll tell them, because there's no enzymes in the milk that I think God naturally designed to be there. So when it comes to dairy, I'm a big fan of the raw stuff. I just think that people digest it better, unless, like you said, they have some kind of allergy or something like that. I think with the raw stuff, it has the enzymes and people tend to do a lot better with it. So that's my 2 cents on dairy. I'm a fan. So next on our list here is eggs, and specifically the yolks as well. I would say 100% a superfood. I would say this is actually one that people should probably be eating every day, if not almost every day, because number one, amazing source of protein, and then number two, amazing source of healthy fats that support your hormones and support your cholesterol, which we'll talk about that in a second. And then also just a lot of different nutrients, different vitamins, different minerals, choline, stuff like that, that can really help our brain health, can help our focus, can help our attention, and overall just support our system. When it comes to cholesterol, here's my thing with the eggs, and this will go over with the meat as well. Doctors say, oh, don't eat those foods, it's going to increase your cholesterol. Well, they are correct in the sense that it should increase your cholesterol, but it should increase the quote unquote good cholesterol, the HDL. And the HDL is actually the molecule that's going to take cholesterol away from your heart back to your liver to be turned into hormones. And so we actually want that and need that to be at a healthy level, but also that's going to be the primary source of what turns into our hormones. So if you have low cholesterol in general, if you have low HDL, the good cholesterol, quote unquote, the good cholesterol, then your hormones are going to be wrecked. And so it's like we need good cholesterol to actually protect our heart, and then we need good healthy cholesterol to support our hormones as well. So that goes for the eggs and the meat. Dr. Tim, what are your thoughts on the eggs? You like them? Or you recommend avoiding them? What do you think?
Food, sure. One thing that I wanted to talk about, absolutely, with this episode in relation to eggs is, you'll find if you do food sensitivity testing, most people will show up as having some degree of sensitivity to eggs. It is exceptionally rare that I find that if somebody eliminates eggs that they feel any better. I have had some people that's the case, but like I said, it's very, very, very rare. But in that case, duck eggs are great. Goose eggs are great. Other sort of eggs are phenomenal. Eggs are prepackaged little balls of nutrients that have everything that is required for the early stages of life for ducks, chickens, all that stuff. And so for that reason, they have a ton of fats. They have a ton of awesome nutrients for us that we can just get all in one place. And so very, very, very important. Now, there are some micronutrients that people should be aware of that you need to eat the whole egg, basically. So the yolk is very, very, very dense in choline. Choline is very, very necessary for acetylcholine production, which is your main neurotransmitter. It's super necessary for methylation. It's super necessary for bile production. Super necessary for a lot of functions in our body. Helps us make creatine. There's a lot of different stuff that choline is involved with, and it's a very, very necessary nutrient. Unless you want to deliberately supplement choline, make sure you're having the egg yolk with the egg whites, because egg whites strip our bodies of choline while the egg yolks are very, very dense, and it will basically balance out to a net positive for choline for you. But all in all, eggs are a superfood. If you can eat them, eat them. If you can't, well, get up duck eggs or something else like that. Maybe ostrich eggs. You'd only have to eat one for breakfast, or maybe a half to get all the macros that you'd require for breakfast
for the week.
Yeah, exactly. You could just crack it open and then wear it, like, blend it up, wear it like one of those soda drink hats, just sip on it all day, get all those nutrients. Don't actually do that. That's a terrible idea.
What is it that an ostrich egg? I just looked it up. An ostrich egg is equivalent. It's a massive egg for those that don't know. It's equivalent to roughly 24 chicken eggs, just so you're aware of what Dr. Tim is saying here.
That's wild.
So you're going to get yoked. Wild. You're going to be huge, your muscles and everything.
Yoked. No pun intended, right?
Actually not, but there you go.
Okay, so that's eggs. Eat them.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, let's go. All right, meats. Next up, meat. What do you got?
Meats are the next thing on the list. So I think it's important to talk about which meats, not necessarily different animals, but more so, well, maybe a little bit, but mainly grass-fed, pasture-raised, free-range, whatever you want to call it, compared to just your regular off-the-shelf meats. So just like you said before, the fatty acid profile of these meats is going to be completely different if you get the grass-fed versus grain-fed, all that stuff. So if you want really good anti-inflammatory meats, it's got to be the good grass-fed stuff. Butter, it's the same way. Butter is a superfood. We already covered that with dairy though, but you need to make sure that you're getting the good organic grass-fed, all the buzzwords. If you can find a local farmer that raises his own grass-fed meats and all that stuff, that is probably the best way that you can possibly go. Local is the best because you know that there's very, very little processing, and you can actually speak to the person raising them to understand what's going on. But you talked about cholesterol and all that stuff. Oxidized cholesterol, no bueno. But what causes that is inflammation, insulin, all sorts of those issues. But if we have good anti-inflammatory meats, it shouldn't affect cholesterol in a negative way. And then you'll have hormones, all that stuff. A huge part of what we like to talk about is blood sugar regulation and fueling yourself properly to not drive cortisol through the roof. Starvation mode is not healthy long term. So with that being the case, in order to mitigate carbs and really fuel our bodies, we need to get plenty of protein and fat. And the best place to get lots of protein and fat with very, very, very little carbs, meats. So you need to get plenty of meat. Awesome for brain health. awesome for hormones, awesome for rebuilding your tissues. I mean, meat is essential. I've never had a patient who is completely vegan, completely vegetarian, and they are truly healthy. It just doesn't happen. You need all of the essential nutrients that come with meats.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, Dr. Joel?
Yeah, big fan of meat. I will say the meats that I'm a big fan of goes back to mainly the beef, anything from a cow, chicken, and then fish. Those are probably like the main ones, right? But there's other things, right? Like lamb and bison, some of the fancier ones. Those are all really good as well. The ones that I'm not the biggest fan of probably goes back to pork. And I think probably part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of pork though is it's a little bit more difficult to find like quality quality pork. And so I usually find bacon is great, but I usually find that like pork chops tend to not be as appetizing sounding to me. And I don't have any food aversions, but I generally find that my body's a little bit more almost like energy sensitive to different types of foods, to where it's like if it's not that good for you, I feel like my body just naturally doesn't really want it as much. So take that as you may, but big fan of meats. I think that we need good protein. And one of the biggest issues, I'm just going to throw this stuff in, one of the biggest issues with looking at other sources for protein, whether you're trying to get protein from beans, from quinoa, or from nuts, I think the issue is that these things are not very bioavailable. So when you look at meat, when you look at things like whey protein, which comes from cows, when you look at things like this, the bioavailability of the amino acids is really high. So if you get like, let's say 20 grams of protein from, grass-fed beef, I believe it's about 18 to 20 grams of protein that your body's actually going to absorb and use. It might actually be higher. It might be just 20. But I know that when you look at like pea protein, for example, your body's, if you get 20 grams of protein, it's more like your body's kind of getting and absorbing more like 8 to 10 grams of protein, because they're not the same availability. The nutrients are not quite as easily used by the cells. And so that's a big thing that I find. But I also find that in general, if the cows are healthy, their food is full of nutrients. I think the best feeling that I've ever had in waking up was the night before I had like a pound of ribeye, and maybe some fruit and honey. And I usually get my steaks cooked like rare, where it's just crispy, kind of grilled crispy on the outsides, and then it's nice and red in the middle. And I've done that, and I just feel amazing the next morning. Amazing. So I would say meat, definitely a superfood. I'd say, like you said, you want to prioritize quality nutrients. There's things like turkey and ham that I think are good. If you can get like pasture raised, that's awesome. With ham, you got to be careful of like nitrites and nitrates, which are different preservatives, things like that. But overall, I'm a fan. I think we should be eating meats a lot. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next, artificial sweeteners. Dr. Tim, this is when you added. I'm going to have you jump into this one for us here, because you had some good things to say before we hit recording today.
Definitely not superfood, that's for sure. But the reason I wanted to touch on this one is it's rather controversial within the health realm. So if you get into kind of the bodybuilding realm, they'll talk about, you need no fat, artificial sweeteners, all this stuff to help you on your cut and all that stuff leading up to a bodybuilding show and all this stuff. But you and I both know that bodybuilders absolutely screw their hormones and really mess with their metabolism in the training that they do.
Gut.
And so I would like to talk about this for the sake of clarifying that if you're listening to a bodybuilder for your normal wellness, health, longevity habits, then you're not listening to the right person. Absolutely not. So it's very important to understand that if you are doing things to deliberately mess with your hormones, whether it's intermittent fasting, whether it's hormone replacement, whether it is artificial sweeteners, it's not going to be great. So, for example, the reason that I wanted to include artificial sweeteners in this episode, even beyond that, is some people do all right with it, at least help them dig a hole. So Some of my worst diabetic patients that I've ever seen, they are addicted to artificial sweeteners because they were told that it's totally fine. But they are so incredibly sensitive to the taste of sweetness and almost like the ritual of sweetness, where they are conditioned and their body senses the sweetness to the point where they start hypersecreting insulin as a response. And they're already insulin resistant. And so their body's trying to secrete a ton of it anyway to keep up with demand and keep the cells listening. And then they just pour that on top of it, and it just makes it all the much worse. Well, I've seen some people with blood sugar that, most of the time is somewhere around 300 to 400. And then they get off of those, and all of a sudden it's, below 200. And all they did was change that. And so it's okay, your body isn't supposed to actually sense that as sugar, but what's going on there? And it's all of the excess insulin resistance that happens as a result. And I've seen all kinds of stuff online where people will cite all kinds of research and say, there's no evidence and this and that and all these papers and all this. I've seen firsthand with patients. They're of the influencers and people that I have seen defend their opinion about artificial sweeteners are not doctors who deal with patients in a clinical setting that have significant metabolic issues. And absolutely every single time that I've had a diabetic patient who's addicted to those things, they get rid of it and they get exponentially better. And so they are not good in that circumstance. However, there are some people where if, say, you're drinking 12 sodas a day or something like that, of course, that's not something that most people are doing. But if you have a significant addiction to, drinking quite a few sugary drinks a day or things like that, it can help you in the process of weaning your way off of it for a little while and getting you to condition yourself to stay away while not deliberately adding in that excess sugar before your body is at the point of significant insulin resistance and having problems with that. So I wouldn't say it's good for you. I've seen a lot of stuff online where these, all these guys will say it's not bad for you and it's good for you because it's better for your metabolism and, not all the sugar and all this stuff. I definitely disagree with that. But I'd also like to say it's not awful if the trade-off is I'm going to do a ton of sugar instead. So if you're using it as a stepping stone to get away from doing way too much sugar and weaning yourself off of it while trying to improve blood sugar, not the worst thing. But ideally you just won't do any of that stuff. But I like to approach my patients and people that are struggling with this stuff with a little bit of empathy and not just saying, you just need to stop. And if you can't, totally, then it's a you problem. You have to make things feasible for people and give manageable, achievable steps with care.
Totally. Well, Dr. Tim, I think all of our listeners can hear that from you when you talk, is that there's always a component of like, hey, here's the truth. Like you should probably stop that. But also this balance of like, hey, but here's the other options and here's kind of what you can do. So I think you always do a great job of that. And I certainly try to do a great job as well. But yeah, agreed. Artificial sweeteners, and just for those that are listening, we're talking about things like sucralose, aspartame, things like that. They're neurotoxin. They're literally neurotoxic. So literally what I often find is if you take those nutrients and you put them on the tongue, for a lot of people, when we go through the muscle testing, it literally just makes all of their muscles weak. If someone's really healthy, maybe they don't have such a severe reaction with things. But most people, I would argue, that are coming to the office, they're not super healthy. So yeah, artificial sweeteners can definitely cause some stress with things. Next on our list, we have green leafy vegetables, beans, and fermented foods, probiotics, and multivitamins. Here's kind of my analysis of these things. These things can be helpful with the green leafy vegetables, fermented foods, kale, things like that. There's nutrients in them. I think that a diverse diet of fruits and vegetables and foods in general really helps create diversity in the gut microbiome. And I think that's ultimately one of the best case scenarios. But the couple of things that can kind of interfere with that idea that like God made all these foods and we should enjoy them, I think the biggest thing that gets in the way of that is things like man-made problems, like the pesticides, for example. So it's like if the food has a bunch of pesticides, like that kale might actually not be that good for you. It might be worse for you. And we should probably do an episode on this at some point, but talking about like what exactly has pesticides, and even the organic stuff, what is it sprayed with? because I think that there's some things there that could be really helpful for people. But the biggest thing to safeguard here is if you have some kind of SIBO or SIFO issue. So I'm talking about a small intestine bacterial overgrowth or a small intestine fungal overgrowth, where basically you have a bacteria or fungus out of balance, maybe built up. And that is the biggest sign of that is going to be that those things are giving off gas. So either we have gas or we have bloating. And so if we have gas or bloating, chances are we should probably be following more of like a low FODMAP diet, where we're going to be focused more on avoiding the foods that tend to feed bacteria and fungus and focusing on the other foods. Herbs and things, of course, like that. Movement is super helpful with those things. But in general, I think vegetables, I like vegetables. I think they're superfoods. I think they can be helpful, but I think organic is definitely the way to go. If you can grow it yourself, that's even better. And just be careful if you have any kind of bacterial or fungal imbalances, that it could be making things worse. When it comes to beans and legumes, my biggest thing there is, they're not a great source of protein. They're heavy on carbs. So if you eat them, just understand that's a carbohydrate. And so you want to make sure that your protein is, 2 times higher than your carbohydrates with most meals. And for most people that are trying to lose weight, the protein needs to be 3 times higher, if not 4 times higher. That's kind of my take on some of those foods. Dr. Tim, anything else to add? And we also kind of have the probiotic topic and multivitamins that I didn't touch on as much.
I think it's important to talk about how these things are connected. Why did we chunk in fermented foods, multivitamins, as well as these green leafy vegetables, beans, legumes, all that stuff? So each of these things has the significant potential to disrupt or help the microbiome. And so green leafy vegetables, beans, legumes, all that, those are high in FODMAPs, which are short chain sugars that ferment very readily with our microbiome. And so if you have something like SIBO, SIFO, where your microbiome is grown in your small intestine, you'll get where these ferment, drive gas production, and just lead to bloating, uncomfortable, abdomen, gut pain, you name it, all that stuff can lead to diarrhea, constipation, you name it, bowel irregularity. And so these foods as a whole, you think about it, what does everybody say about green leafy vegetables and beans and all that stuff? Super, super healthy. Well, yeah, they might have some really good micronutrients and lots of fiber and all that stuff, but that is also the reason that they may be counterintuitive if you have some sort of overgrowth. Because those FODMAPs or those sugars that are found in those foods and the fiber that's found in there, they can make your overgrowth and your inflammation and your immune system react to the microbiome worse. And so circumstantially, people that have those issues should stay away from those foods until they resolve the microbiome issue. That will get a whole lot more straightforward. So yes, superfood as a whole, due to the micronutrient content and all that stuff. However, if you have some sort of gut overgrowth, it's going to make your problem worse. So no longer superfood. I would say super toxic at that point. Fermented foods, probiotics, all that stuff. Like you said, they can be helpful. I would argue that that's only on the rare occurrence that somebody's on antibiotics for a month,
Agreed.
6 weeks, months, all that stuff.
Agreed.
More often than not, if you only have short bursts of antibiotics here and there, some sort of infection, and by here or there, I mean once every couple of years maybe, your microbiome will not get totally stripped, and you will be able to have a balanced microbiome. But usually, if things are out of balance, you require antimicrobial herbs to fix it. You don't require more bacteria, fungus, all that stuff on top of the already overgrown microbiome. And so probiotics, fermented foods, all that stuff, in my opinion, are counterintuitive for that reason. Agreed. However, there's a lot of great research that says that, a very not diverse microbiome has all sorts of connections with developmental delays, autism, chronic health conditions, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, all sorts of different issues. However, is that beneficial? Because there is such thing as too much. And so for the moms out there, the first exposure to microbiome that your baby has is going through the birth canal. And so that's where C-section babies a lot of times have these problems as well. And so just understanding that before you go through the birthing process, and also making sure that your gut and your microbiome is nice and balanced before that, you want to pass down a good balanced microbiome to the child. So just things to keep in mind. But then multivitamins. Why multivitamins? Because, in theory, those are just providing your body with a little bit of everything that it needs to keep you up on your nutrients. Well, the microbiome has foods that it prefers. So if you have high FODMAP diet, if you have, say you're taking an iron supplement, say you're taking a multivitamin, there's different micronutrients that the microbiome will use to feed on to boost its own aerobic capacity or anaerobic or whatever energy system that they use. And so riboflavin, very high on that list. And I have yet to find a multivitamin that does not contain riboflavin or vitamin B2. So whenever somebody is going through a step-by-step, I hate to use the word protocol, but just going through a program where we are working through some sort of overgrowth in their gut, I always tell people, stay away from multivitamins, stay away from probiotics, stay away from iron supplements, stay away from all those things, because we don't want to feed something that we're trying to calm down.
Yep.
So very circumstantial for all these things. Multivitamins are great. It's just a matter of when and why. But it's always something that we discuss at the end of care once we've fixed all the other problems. So
totally.
Yeah,
totally.
That's my 2 cents there. What do you say we get into coffee and then we split this into a part 2? Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I think the favorites. Yeah, totally. I think the favorite section is just something to kind of run through. Like I think we could wrap it up, but if you feel like we want to do more next time, we definitely can. Coffee, the biggest thing. I'll have you let me know. But coffee in general, I think it has a lot of antioxidants. One of the problems with coffee is it can stress your adrenal glands. So if you have already ran down adrenals, you already have a lot of stress. You already have a hard time getting up in the morning. Sometimes you get a lot of headaches in the front of your head. Sometimes you crash in the afternoons. If you already have these issues with your adrenal glands, coffee is not going to support them. It's going to tell them to work harder. So in those situations, it cannot be a blessing, but more stressful to your system. But then also having a good quality coffee, I think, is key. A lot of people get really bad quality coffee and then they react to it and they wonder why. And it's like, well, it's super processed. It was, the beans were grinded up, months ago, and then they've just been sitting on a shelf. So what you want to get is you want to get organic beans. You want to preferably get it roasted recently, so it has a roast date on it, and roasted locally, ideally. And then you want to grind the beans up yourself, and usually that's going to be a much better quality coffee. So that's my 2 cents there. And the only other thing I would just mention is kind of going through my list of favorites. But Dr. Tim, anything to add to that? And do you want to? Should we go ahead and wrap up, or should we go ahead and finish it?
No, I think that covers it. I think that's great.
Cool.
I think we just give some of our favorites and wrap it up.
Let's do it. All right. I'll run through here first, Dr. Tim, and then I'll have you jump in after. So some of my favorites: butter, grass-fed butter. I think we should be getting roughly about 2 tablespoons of butter a day for adults, roughly 1 tablespoon for kids. And I think butter is an amazing source of healthy fats for testosterone and hormones in general. And I think it also is a huge part for overall brain health and energy and stamina. Raw milk, one of my favorite things, just because of the digestive benefits with the enzymes. Red meat, I think, is amazing. Remember, the butter, the red meat, and the eggs will increase your cholesterol. It should be the good cholesterol, though. The good cholesterol. The bad cholesterol is not increased by these foods. It's increased by oxidative stress, which is inflammation with the cells, things like that. Eggs, I think, are amazing for you, between the fats and the protein and all the nutrients we talked about. I think olive oil is key. I think you should be eating roughly 1 to 2 tablespoons a couple times a week. So maybe 2 to 4 tablespoons a week of olive oil, if not more. Don't cook with it. Remember, heating it up, it doesn't do well with heat. It oxidizes. And so add it to your food after. I think sardines are amazing. I think sardines are so good for you if you can stomach the smell and all that good stuff. But even with a little bit of olive oil and maybe some lemon juice, things like that, it's actually not too bad on a salad. Romaine lettuce, carrots, and bell peppers, especially the red and yellow bell peppers. I think they're amazing due to overall just the colors between them. And I think there's so many nutrients with romaine lettuce, with carrots, with bell peppers that are beneficial for our gut and have a really low FODMAP level to them, where they're not necessarily going to cause a lot of issues with the bacteria and fungus. So, Dr. Tim, that's my kind of short list there. What might be on yours as well?
Yeah, I like that. I really resonate with that list. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because I don't eat it, but Liver is super high on that list. Liver is super dense with a lot of different micronutrients, lots of vitamin A, lots of good healthy fats. It's basically a one-stop shop for every single thing that your body requires. So consider it. There's ways to mask it in your food, all that stuff. But I mean, you hit it all: eggs, meat, milk, butter. All of those really, really, really are my favorites, for all the reasons that you stated. So I don't think we need to beat a dead horse there. They just help mitigate hormone dependence to regulate blood sugar, give your body the proper nutrients to rebuild your tissues, rebuild hormones. And in my opinion, having enough of those is really what leads to metabolic disease and basically all the chronic illnesses that we end up seeing in our offices. So it's all good stuff. But
cool.
Yeah, unless you have anything else to add, let's get wrapped up.
Let's wrap up. I'm Dr. Joel Miller. The practice here is Freedom Health and Wellness in Flower Mound, Texas, in the Dallas area here. You can find me online at drjoelmiller.com or on Instagram. Just search up Dr. Joel Miller. If you guys have any questions or need any help or direction, we would love to help you if possible. And what about you, Dr. Tim?
Dr. Tim Augustiniak down here in Bentonville, Arkansas. My practice is called Flourish Functional Wellness Center. If you want to find me online, my website is draugustiniak.com. That's draugustiniak.com. Yeah, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out and let us know.
Cool. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next one.